tagal nila ibigay yung check. Ang inabot kami ng 20 minutes. Nagtataas na kami ng kamay sa harapan nila. Wala, di kami pinapansin.
Hey TPTers! Welcome to another episode of Vince and Yosh.
In this episode, we're gonna talk about one of the most difficult visas to get, especially for us travelers from developing countries like the Philippines, and that is Schengen Visa. Okay, so we have just arrived from our 4th European trip, and naturally, whenever we post about our trips to Europe on Facebook or on Instagram, we get a lot of messages about the Schengen Visa. So, this video is part of our Europe series. So, if you're interested in traveling to Europe,
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the subscribe button and clicking the bell icon for instant notifications para sa aming mga future uploads.
okay, so let's start.
Tara!
First, what is a Schengen Visa?
Ano nga ba yun?
The Schengen Visa is a travel document that allows the holder to enter any of the 26 states that are part of the Schengen Agreement. Think of it as an almost all-access pass to many countries in Europe, eliminating the immigration borders within the Schengen zone and the hassle of having to apply for a visa for each individual country.
What are the Schengen countries?
Okay, so not all countries in Europe are part of the Schengen Agreement. So there are only 26 countries included in that agreement. And these are...
Check your screen ninyo.
Yes, but basically most of the most popular destinations in Europe are part of the Schengen Agreement. So France, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, Iceland, Germany, they're within the Schengen zone.
So the question is, which embassy should I lodge my visa application? It will depend on the purpose of your trip or your overall European itinerary. The rule is, if you're visiting just one country, apply at the embassy of that country. If you're visiting multiple countries, apply at the embassy where you will be staying the longest. For example, if you plan to spend 3 days in the Netherlands, 3 days in Italy, and 5 days in France, apply at the French embassy. However, some countries have additional rules. It is best to double check with the embassy to be absolutely sure.
So yeah, so if you're going to France, then apply at the French embassy. If you're going to Italy and Italy is the only destination in your itinerary, then you need to apply through the Italian embassy.
Yes.
If Iceland is the only destination in your itinerary, then you need to apply at the Norwegian embassy. You might be asking why the embassy of Norway? Because Iceland doesn't have an embassy here in the Philippines. So, yung mga visa applications for Iceland, Norway yung process. In the same way that Portugal doesn't have here in the Philippines. So, if you're applying for a visa, for a Schengen visa, and you're going to Portugal, you need to course your application through the Greek embassy. So, because not all countries have embassies here in the Philippines. Sometimes, yun, meron silang mga tag team, ganyan.
Katropa.
Sila yung nag-aayos nung application.
Yes.
So, yun. But what if I'm spending equal number of days in different countries? So, yun. So, if you're spending, for example, 5 days in Italy, 5 days in France, and 5 days in Spain, then, paano yun? Ang rule is the longest. What if, in that case, pantay-pantay sila? In those cases, you need to apply at the embassy of the country that you will visit first. So, for example, in our example, 5 days in Italy, and then 5 days in France, and then 5 days in Spain, you need to apply at the Italian embassy because the first country that you're gonna visit is Italy. So, this rule only applies if you will be spending the same number of days. Actually, the same number of nights. Because the embassies count the number of nights, not the number of days.
What are the requirements? Schengen embassies usually ask for almost the same requirements, but there are some variations. Here are the documents that are in common to all of them. Valid passport, accomplished application form, recent photo, proof of available accommodations, photocopy of passport stamps and visas, proof of employment, proof of financial means, identity documents, complete itinerary, flight reservations, and visa fee.
So those are the requirements that are in common among all of them. But there are some variations. So sometimes, iba-iba kasi sila ng rule. Some embassies ask for more. Some embassies are stricter than others. For example, if you're self-employed, some embassies will accept kahit business registration and financial docs ng company. But for example, the Italian embassy will ask for the articles of incorporation, lahat ng documents na. So iba-iba sila ng strictness level.
Yan. Actually, kung self-employed ka, tapos dineclare mo na may sariling business, ang daming kukuhanin, pati yung BRR plate, cedula, mayor's permit, lahat ng klase ng documents na pwede nilang makuha sa'yo, kukunin nila.
That's sa Italian embassy. Pero we've also tried applying kasi through the Greek embassy as self-employed also.
Yes.
And hindi ganun kadami yung documents na kinukuha. The additional documents or the complete list of documents that are required depends on which embassy you are applying at, basically. So, yeah. We have only tried applying at 4 embassies. So we have tried the French, German, Italian, and Greek embassies. So for those embassies, we have created a very comprehensive visa guide if you plan to apply also for a Schengen visa through any of those embassies. We're gonna put the links to those visa guides in the description below. So, yeah.
What is the application process? What are the steps?
The application process varies from embassy to embassy. Some embassies course their application through a third-party firm. So, for example, the German embassy now employs VFS for the application processing, or at least yung receiving of the applications. Same with France. I think Belgium also is through VFS. Netherlands is through VFS. Yun. And then, some embassies tap another agency. So, in the case of Italy, it's VIA. And then, others handle all their visa or consular processes in-house. For example, the Greek embassy, they accept the applications na sila talaga. Walang third party. Yun. German embassy used to be like that too until I think earlier this year. Na they switched to VFS also. I think the trend is pa-VFS na parate, which is
agency.
Which is easier kasi usually if it's through VFS, walang interview involved. Yun. Mamaya namin i-discuss yung pros and cons ng interview.
Do we need to book flights before applying for a visa?
This is one of the most frequently asked questions that we get and this is valid because flights to Europe are not cheap. The problem is, what if you book the flights first and then you apply for a visa and then you get rejected? So sayang naman yung flights. But the truth is, flight tickets are not required when you're applying for a Schengen visa.
Yes.
But you need to submit flight reservation. So ano ba yung difference ng tickets and flight reservations? Tickets, meaning you already paid for it, parang book mo na.
Na-book nabayaan mo na sa credit card, lahat. Compared mo sa flight reservation, you only have to pay for the flight reservation itself na parang super mura lang. So parang ginagawa is, i-reserve lang yung flights na yun, for example, 24 hours or 48 hours. Depende yun sa airline. Pero yun, ganun lang siya. Tapos, bibigyan kayo ng parang flight reservation number. Tapos, nandun din yung flight details, kagaya ng ano ba yung airline, schedule, destination, lahat nandun.
Meron din kayong booking code, yung 6 na digit na booking code, you also get those. So, saan ba makikita yan? Saan ba makakakuha? Yan. So,
Na-caught off guard ako.
saan ba makakakuha ng flight reservations? Some airlines provide free flight reservations. You can actually reserve flights for a certain period of time. And then they can issue the booking number, the proof that you have reserved. But most airlines do not do that. So, fortunately, you can get a flight reservation through a travel agency because they have a system where they can reserve. They have access to flight systems, and they can reserve some of the flights. So not all airlines can be reserved. For example, most low-cost carriers do not allow reservations. At least most full-service airlines, you can actually reserve. In our case, we always book through a travel agency that we work with.
Yes.
If you need flight reservations, we created a page where you'll find a form there and just fill it out, and then somebody from the agency will contact you.
Is travel insurance really necessary?
The short answer is
Yes.
The long answer is yes. So the travel insurance, may certain amount yan na required, and it has to cover the entire trip, your entire stay in the Schengen area. And yun nga, kung merong requirement na additional days like the Italian embassy,
15 days.
then it has to cover those additional days too.
Yeah.
So you'll know naman when you check the so it varies then from kung may additional days or wala, depende yan sa embassy. You'll know when you see the list of requirements.
Sila.
Nandun naman.
Super specific naman ang mga requirements sila, guys. So, check nyo na lang.
So you can get travel insurance from, there are a lot of travel insurance providers na pwede for Schengen. So standard insurance, Pacific Cross. Yeah. And if you need travel insurance, the same page where you can request for flight reservation, there's also a field there if
you need
travel insurance. Just parang iti-tick nyo lang or something. So pwede nyo na siyang i-order kasama ng flight reservation.
Can I visit countries that are not in the itinerary I submitted?
Yes, you can, as long as it is within the Schengen zone. One of the requirements is a detailed travel itinerary, right? So sometimes you would make an itinerary, for example, Italy, France, Netherlands, yun yung itinerary nyo. And then after you're granted a visa, may nagbago sa plano nyo, naging Italy, France, Spain. Okay lang ba na may magbago? Oo, okay lang, as long as it's within the Schengen zone. Within the Schengen zone, there are no border control. The only time that they will check your visa is when you're entering and exiting the Schengen zone. And few other spots. For example, if you're crossing to Sweden from Copenhagen, then meron ding visa check doon. So may mga certain, and of course, merong mga spot checks. Minsan parang randomly may mag-a-ask ng passport nyo, ganyan. Our only guidance is we encourage you to at least visit the country that granted you the visa. Remember that having a Schengen visa does not guarantee entry to the Schengen zone. They can still turn you away at the airport. We've heard stories like that before. For example, you have a Schengen visa granted by the German embassy, and then you enter France, and that's okay, you enter France. Pero if biglang natapat ka sa strict na immigration officer and they ask for your itinerary or hotel bookings, and when they see your hotel bookings and itinerary, they find that you're no longer staying in Germany, who granted you the visa, they can turn you away. Our only guidance is at least honor the country that gave you the visa. Because it happened to me before, I wasn't turned away, pero they checked my hotel bookings, itinerary, to check if nagmamatch yung visa ko. Thankfully, nagmamatch naman, and I was prepared. Yan. So, yes, you can have some deviations from the itinerary that you submitted, pero yun lang, at the very least,
i-honor nyo naman, di ba? Be truthful. Be honest. Huwag nyo gamitin yung parang pag maluwag yung embassy, doon kayo mag-apply, tapos di nyo sila pupuntahan. So,
at syapwera na sila.
Siyempre, pag na-discover nila na dumadaming ganyang cases, mas magiging strict lalo sila. So, ayun. It will affect us in the future. Can I visit the UK using a Schengen visa?
No!
No. The United Kingdom is not part of the Schengen zone and does not honor the Schengen visa. They have their own visa policy. If you want to visit the UK, you will need to secure a UK visa. Can I visit other countries in Europe that are outside the Schengen zone using the Schengen visa? The answer is yes!
There are some non-Schengen countries in Europe that accept a double or multiple entry Schengen visa. Not all countries, but some. Countries like Albania, Andorra, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Montenegro, Cyprus, Bulgaria, Romania, North Macedonia, Serbia allow entry to holders of a valid passport with a valid multiple entry Schengen visa. So, what does it mean? In our case, on our last trip, we visited Croatia. So, we didn't have to apply for a Croatian visa. Normally, if Croatia lang yung bibisitahin nyo, you will have to have a Croatian visa. But if you have a multiple entry or double entry Schengen visa, you can actually visit Croatia without applying for a Croatian visa.
Yes.
You just need to show the valid Schengen visa. But there are certain conditions if you want to visit the countries that we mentioned using a Schengen visa. Number one, the Schengen visa has to be valid. Meaning, you can't just visit a country after your Schengen visa has expired. So, for example, expiration ng Schengen visa nyo is hanggang, kunyari, March 25, tapos March 26, pupunta kayo ng Croatia. No, hindi pwede. Kailangan, bago mag-expire yung Schengen visa nyo, makapunta kayo ng Croatia or Montenegro, ganun. But dapat within the validity period of the Schengen visa. Once it expires, you cannot enter the countries that we mentioned anymore. The second condition is that it has to be a double or multiple entry visa. Hindi pwedeng single entry visa. Remember, there are 3 types of visas.
Single entry, double entry, and multiple entry visa.
Yeah. So, single entry, pag nagamit mo, pagpasok mo ng Schengen, paso na yun agad. Pwede ka lumabas ng Schengen, of course, ng Schengen area, but hindi ka na pwedeng pumasok ulit. So, you cannot use a single entry Schengen visa to enter Croatia, Bulgaria.
Yung mga na-mention na countries kanina.
Yun. So, the second condition is it has to be double or multiple entry. The third condition is that you have used the visa. The third condition is that you have used the visa at least once for multiple entry, and for a double entry visa that you have used it only once. Remember, when you have a multiple entry visa, you can go in and out only. So you cannot fly from Manila to Serbia using a Schengen visa na agad. Dapat pumasok mo muna sa Schengen visa bago ka pumunta dun sa mga countries na nabanggit namin.
Kumbaga dapat pumasok kayo ng immigration at tatakan yung Schengen visa niyo.
They will look for the stamp, basically. For double entry visa, kailangan nagamit mo siya once. Once lang. Kasi the moment na twice mo na siya nagamit, mapapasok na siya. So, hindi na siya valid. Those are the 3 conditions. So, the visa has to be valid. It has to be a multiple entry visa, or in some cases, double entry. And that you have used it at least once for multiple entry, or exactly once for double entry visa.
Are embassies really strict?
Yes! Yes, but some embassies are more strict than others, and some are more lenient than others. In our travel circles, the Italian and the Spanish embassies are known for being the strictest. So they have the longest list of requirements, and sila yung mabusisi talaga, very meticulous. While the Dutch and the Austrian embassies are more forgiving and more considerate. So, yeah.
Is there an interview?
So, it depends on the embassy. So, some embassies require interviews, some do not. But usually, when VFS is involved, wala nang interview. But here's the thing, they can call you for an interview if they feel like they need to. Yeah. So, if your case is a little bit complicated or they have doubts, they have the right to call you or summon you for an interview. Personally, I feel more comfortable, I feel more confident when there's an interview. Because the problem with applying na walang interview is hindi mo ma-explain. Yan. Sometimes kasi parang magsasubmit ka lang ng requirements, parang andali kasi pagdudahan. Pero kapag may interview, you can easily explain ano yung purpose mo, ano yung background mo, ganun, why did you need to take that trip, ganun.
What are the usual questions they ask at the interview?
If you are called for an interview, then the questions will probably be the following. What is the purpose of your trip? How long is your trip? How long will you stay in the Schengen zone or in that country? What is your first stop? What countries are you going to visit?
When will you leave? When will you be back? Will this be your first time in Europe? What countries did you visit on your first trip to Europe and for what purpose?
Basically, if there's an interview and they ask you those questions, it's all about consistency. Kasi they just want to make sure that whatever it is you're saying at the interview is the same as whatever you wrote on the application form. So it's all about consistency. So it's important that you know your trip, the details of your trip, your itinerary inside and out, because they will be asking questions about those. But there are more probing questions, like, do you know anyone in this country? Do you know anyone in any other Schengen country? Do you know anyone in the UK? How are you related to them? How did you meet? With whom are you traveling? How are you related to your companion? What do you do for a living? How long have you been with your company? Does your company know you're taking this trip? Do you own properties in the Philippines or your home country? Those are more important questions. So this is not just about consistency. They're asking about your background, especially your rootedness here in the Philippines and your connection in the country. Remember, what they're trying to avoid is for tourists to overstay. And if they feel like you have more reason to overstay or to not leave their country, then mas maliit yung chance na ma-approve. Hindi naman mas maliit yung chance. More on, kailangan nilang malaman yun. So, kaya nila tinatanong kung meron ka kakilala doon, may kamag-anak ka ba doon, kasi dapat mas rooted ka dito sa Pilipinas kaysa
Ano yung iniwasan nila na baka mag-TNT kayo doon? Mga ganun. Kaya tinatanong nila yun. Pinoprotect lang naman nila yung
national
interest nila. Di ba?
Ayun. Pero the key to any interview is, number 1, to be consistent, and number 2 is to be truthful. Actually, mas important yun to be truthful, because if you're truthful, it's easy to be consistent. Kasi if you're saying the truth, no matter how many times you twist the question, you will be telling the truth. The same answer, diba? You will be saying the same answer.
How much money should I have in the bank to be approved?
Nako, isa yan sa pinaka-madalas
tanong
question.
sa amin, actually.
No one really knows for sure what the minimum amount is. So they don't say explicitly na you have to have 100,000, you have to have 1 million. They don't say that because the amount depends on a whole lot of factors. So it depends on the length of your trip, the countries you will visit, where you will be staying, things like that. So it depends on a lot of factors. But the rule of thumb is, remember, you will be submitting flight reservations, hotel reservations. So add the cost of the flights and the hotels plus probably 60 euro per day of stay. So ano yung 60 euro? Some embassies kasi require 50 euro per day na allowance, some 60. Yun. So i-peg na lang natin siya sa 60. But some are lower, some are higher than that. So for example, France requires 120 euro per day, pero hindi pa kasama yung accommodations kasi dun sa computation nila. So, add the cost of the flights, plus the hotel, plus yung, sabihin natin, 60 euro per day, that should be the minimum amount. But remember, that's the minimum amount. Minimum amount. Hindi pwede na, pag in-add mo yung flights, hotels, and yung allowance, ang total kunyari nun is 100,000. Tapos, ang laman ng bank account nyo is 100,000 din. Parang it's hard for the embassy to believe na gagastusin mo lahat ng pera mo for that trip. Baka wala ka ng balak bumalik, kaya ganon. Hindi pwedeng ganon lang. So it has to be more than the minimum amount. It has to be like a lot more than that. They have to be convinced that when you return to the Philippines after the trip, you still have the means to sustain your life basically here, that hindi ka tipong maghihikaos na pagkatapos, kasi kung sakto yung pera mo, ayun, hindi siya kapanipaniwala.
How long is the validity of the visa?
It depends on the itinerary that you will submit, and it depends on the embassy. So you have to be careful. If you're applying for a Schengen visa, you have to decide your travel dates already. You have to pick your dates, because sometimes some embassies will give you a visa valid for those dates only. Kunyari, hindi siya katulad ng Japan visa or Korean visa na meron kang like 2-3 months na allowance, gano'n. Sometimes, sakto lang minsan yung binibigay. When I applied at the French embassy, I submitted a like 7-day or 5-day, I don't forget. I don't remember. When I applied at the French embassy, I submitted a 5-day itinerary and they gave me visa valid for 15 days. When I applied at the German embassy, I gave them a 53-day itinerary and they gave me a visa valid for 60 days. Yeah. When I applied at the Greek embassy, kung ano yung number of days na sinubmit ko, yun lang talaga yung binigay. No more, no less. Saktong-sakto lang siya. It is very important when you're applying for a Schengen Visa to have final travel dates because you'll never know whether you're gonna get sakto lang na validity ng visa. Swerte mo if more, swerte mo kung multiple lang ibigay. Pero, yun, sometimes single tapos sakto lang talaga. So, dun ka lang sa period na yun.
Is a cover letter required?
No, but we highly encourage you to provide one, especially if there will be no interview. The great thing about having a cover letter is you can explain some things, especially if you have a complicated case. Because there will be no interview, you will have no chance to give
To defend
more details, to defend basically your case. So it's for us, when we apply for a Schengen Visa, we always have a cover letter explaining our background, our purpose of the trip, and that we have been to these countries before, and you know. So if you need a sample cover letter, we have one on our blog, on our written blog, on our website. You can find the link below. Actually, everything that we're discussing, we have a written version of it, so you can easily refer to it. We'll add the link in the description box. So yun, so you can just visit our blog and then bookmark the page so you can refer to it whenever you like.
Yep.
So that's it, guys. If you have more questions, don't forget to comment below and let us know. So maybe we can make a part 2 of this video.
Yeah. And if you find this video helpful, please don't forget to leave a like or to leave a positive comment sa comment box below.
Nagzuzone out ako. Pagod. May jet lag pa kami. Ayun. So that's all for now, Tipiters. See you again next time, and may the goals be with you.
Bye-bye!